With Lugron being our podcast guest on Thursday, I thought it would be a neat chance to go back and watch his unscripted thoughts on A Realm Reborn.
Well, hello there. So there's a lot of things to talk about in Final Fantasy XIV, and there's quite a lot of things I would like to talk about it. But because I know I have a lot of things I want to say about it, the idea of writing a script for every little thing I want to say about it just seemed a little too daunting for me. So with that said, let this video be the first of a new series called Unscripted Thoughts. Now, this series is going to be geared towards me being able to just simply say whatever, and I can just get along with my day and have it all just be done without having to stress about scripts or anything like that. So everything I say is just going to be coming straight from the tap, and we'll just roll with it and see how it goes. So for the first video of this series, let's talk about A Realm Reborn.
I have always wanted to edit a video this well, to really put the time in. From a monetization strategy, I know that you never make back what this puts in there. So as somebody that does this full time, like, it would have to be something that is just a labor of love, because it doesn't come back in that way unless you're somebody that develops an audience of that size. So when you find somebody that's creating at this level, just be sure to appreciate what they're doing. This goes way beyond like, oh, well, they just wanted to make a good video. This is love. But like, honestly, I just wouldn't even know where to start. I wouldn't have any idea of how to get to this level of edit. It's fantastic.
Oh, and before I go on, I should probably give you all the heads up that I'm going to be spoiling the entirety of A Realm Reborn here, including the post-patch MSQ. So, yeah, if you haven't completed A Realm Reborn, don't watch this, please. And I even mentioned the Shadowbringer trailer, and if you haven't seen that, also don't watch this, please. So,
I don't view trailers as spoilers. Trailers are not canonical. They do reveal what characters would be in that expansion, or at least referenced in that expansion. But since they're not canonical, like, they could technically have one there that confuses us because we're like, wait, I thought that person wouldn't be with us. So I don't personally view trailer footage as spoilery, and I have used it as B-roll in the past when I wanted something to fill and have been told that I should not use that. So I'd love to know, if nothing else, do you guys think that spoilers extend to trailers when you're just like looking for footage of the game?
A Realm Reborn. Starting off with the journey, I kind of had my expectations set really, really low going in, because before I got into Final Fantasy XIV, I was seeing all these other people who were mentioning the game and trying to get other people to play the game, was that they kept urging everyone to just please at least tough it out through A Realm Reborn, because people kept saying that A Realm Reborn was by far the weakest of the whole thing, outside of 1.0, but you can't play that. So my expectations were set super low, like dirt to the ground when I heard all that. But going through the actual story itself, everything was just a good time because it was exceeding my incredibly low expectations. Now, I'm gonna keep by what I said when I said the quests were similar to WoW, in which it was just a bunch of fetch quests and just kill X amount of things, please, and come back, because it's pretty much like that for a good while, and there were quite a few of those because I went through the MSQ before they even changed the A Realm Reborn stuff going on with patch 5.3. So I don't know what they all got rid of, but I probably won't remember it if I do go back through it, because I feel like I kind of just forgot a whole bunch in A Realm Reborn, because there's a lot of things in there that just didn't feel really relevant. But going to the main story of things, I started in Gridania because Lancer and whatnot, and honestly, a whole bunch of that segment was just a giant blur. I hardly remember a thing outside of Mr. Ascian making a giant rock monster.
Rock monster!
So that was a thing. Going along with that, you eventually get more acquainted with the Science of Seventh Dawn, and they were a nice little crew. I ended up liking quite a bit of them. Papa Limo and Yida were the first ones I met, and I really liked Papa Limo in particular out of those two. Yida just felt kind of like, I don't know, empty-headed, just a bit reckless, you know, that type of character. So she was for me.
Well, it's nice to see you too.
Papa Limo, I felt like he knew some things, and I kind of wanted to delve into his little noggin there, though I didn't get a whole lot of chances to really talk with him, so there's that. Then you have Thancred. I didn't know how to feel about him. I liked his swagger, but at the same time, I thought he was always getting into things that, you know, he kept biting more than he could chew.
You best come along with us.
I'll have you know I have the reflexes of a cat. And the speed of a mongoose. I dare you!
Then you have Y'shtola, who I liked all around. She seemed like a really competent and active character in the whole story. She didn't get a whole lot of screen time during A Realm Reborn, but whenever she was around, it felt like things were going to start getting done because she seemed to be the type to keep things moving. I don't know, there was something about her that felt like things were really just pushing along whenever she was being involved and that real progress is being made. And then there's Menphilia. I liked her. I really thought her as like a...
Nope. I've agreed with everything he said so far, and I've been enjoying this. I liked her. Nope. She sends me on errands constantly. I don't have any interest in running your little errands.
Really friendly individual. She always stood next to that desk and didn't really do a whole lot of stuff. Sure, yeah, she was in the leadership position and did pretty much all the leading and stuff. I don't know, she was just always sitting there, and anytime there was some type of actual thing that came up, she didn't really do anything.
FBI, open up!
I surrender myself on the condition you spare the...
So to me, she seems like the least combat capable, but at heart, she was a really nice person, and I could get along with her, and I liked her. It's just, it was kind of obvious that she was being set up to be able to fit the whole damsel in distress role, because that kind of happened more than once. So outside of that little whole plot cliche thing, I liked her as a character. Then you have Urianger, and at this point, he seemed like the reliable book nerd source of information of stuff, and he pretty much was. You just had to sort through the way.
So what I don't like about Urianger is that the Old English is so hard for me to read and get what he's trying to get at and like understand, in addition to that maybe tone or anything that's like subtext in there. And so I end up having to read everything he says 2 or 3 times. And so it feels like he talks more than everybody else because I spend so much time reading everything he says. If the game was fully voiced, it would probably bother me a lot less.
He spoke in order to get what he was saying, because he speaks in Old English, and that was I had to do quite a few takes just reading through what he said to understand what he says. Does that mean I'm an idiot? Probably, but that's just my thoughts on Urianger. He was kind of there and just being, you know, full of knowledge. Yeah, I could deal. Then you have Alphino. He was a bit of an enigma to me during A Realm Reborn. He seemed like he knew an abnormal amount concerning his age. Like, he seemed to know a bunch of the ins and outs of how things worked and how to like pull some strings. And I was like, aren't you like 14, dude? So I didn't quite know how to feel about him, because this whole time I felt like he was setting up some type of betrayal, but done in like a suave way of a sorts. So the whole time Alphino was around, I kind of like had my guards somewhat up, but even though he was actually there most of the time when you needed help and help guide everything and put things into motion. So I guess I was just being a little paranoid, because this game likes to throw betrayals at you. So going through along all of that, you end up meeting Ifrit. Actually, you meet Ifrit before you meet the Scions, and it did leave an interesting plot point saying that anyone who gets possessed by the primals, there's no way of saving them. You just gotta off them. And that led to some like dangerous speculations I had, like, oh gosh, it's like a zombie type of situation.
It is odd because the game is so much about redemption up to that point. We've seen, you know, a betrayal, and then like, it's okay because you ended up doing right in the end. And then tempering is just this very, very permanent thing that happens. Like once your mind is captured by a primal or offered to a primal or whatever, like I don't know how clear it is on early there, but like once your mind is possessed by a primal, that's kind of it. And that starts to like remove a lot of the conversation they're having about free will and redemption and all that through everything except dealing with the primals.
situation where if any of my friends get affected by this, they're gone. It's like they're zombified, and it's like, no. No, just thinking about it, I was like, oh no, I can see this being a problem. But you being the warrior of light and being completely immune to all that you're just A-okay. You're just, okay, you do all of it because the Scions can't do jack. So there's that. Moving on to Titan. By the way, on the freaking pre-quest to Titan, that freaking guy, I was right there with Stoller. I was like, did you not hear us? We don't have any time. And he was like, not my problem. Gosh, and that guy made me just go all over the place for a stupid freaking banquet. Freaking rich people things, dagnabbit. So there was that annoying, like, I'm guessing infamous quest that you had to do. Also, I find it freaking great that the goblin people are doing an absolute tragic war of life through death over a cheese recipe. That's a thing, and I appreciate that being a thing. The almighty holy cheese. But anywho, back to the topic. You get this quest after you beat Titan and it says all good things. And I was like, I don't like the sound of that. I know how the rest of that phrase goes. And then guess what? The freaking Waking Sands shootout happens. And I'm like, because here's the thing. Before I turn in any MSQ quests, I talk with all the other relevant NPCs nearby and see what else they have to say. And when I was at the Waking Sands, I went and talked with the little adventure groups in the back room.
What a thorough area.
And I was seeing their whole little story and their little adventure they were going through. And so I was kind of cheering them on throughout their journeys and whatnot. Then the Waking Sand shootout happens. And people die. Like, I wasn't concerned for the safety of the Archons of the Signs of the Seventh Dawn because I saw the trailer Shadowbringers because I happened to be AFK at the main menu longer than 30 seconds. And I watched all of that, and after seeing that, my suspense for any of the Signs of the Seventh Dawn was just completely evaporated from there until all the way to the end of Stormblood. So yeah, word of warning to anyone trying to get their friends to play the game. Have them avoid all the trailers. Because I heard Heaven's Word does it pretty bad too. And I haven't seen that one yet. But just have everyone avoid all the trailers. Because they pretty much spoil the story by seeing it. But going back to what I was talking about. The Signs of the Seventh Dawn.
A lot of the spoiler that is associated with this game, though, is spoiler in hindsight. There are things we watched last week. We watched Rich watch the Shadowbringers story for the trailer for the first time, and I felt very differently now about watching it again than I did back when we first got it. You know a lot more. So I will say that if you have a friend that sees a stream or sees a trailer, don't call out the word spoiler. It's like if a poor choice of words is said around a small child. Don't call attention to it. They don't know what they're seeing because of where they're at. And so a lot of times something happens in the trailer and they go, that's a big spoiler moment. And it's like, oh, wait, what? And now they're looking really closely. So, like, just be aware that's some of the things we're calling spoiler as a community are only spoiler with information that you don't yet have.
I was fine with, like, yeah, they're gonna get kidnapped, but they're gonna be fine in the end. I'm gonna save them probably. But the other side characters, them I feared for. And who'd I see outside waiting to be put in a caravan? They're the little adventure people back there. The people who didn't make it. And it was really freaking tragic and sad to me. That hit me. I was like, they had such huge high hopes. And I was so sad. That was a very sad moment. I was upset with that. I was. But at the same time, that also means the writers did their job. I was like, good job, writers. You made me feel things. Going along through that, you end up doing a bunch of sad stuff at the graveyard. You end up meeting the Final Fantasy's resident Cid. Then you gotta go to Kurthus and start trying to get your way into Ishgard. You have that one really freaking annoying Inquisitor guy who pops out of thin air every time you make any progress anywhere. Then you go to an abandoned fortress somewhere and kill a bunch of dragons, and then an Ascian pops in and wakes up the really big dragon.
I just wanted to say, I'm glad you came along.
Nanny?
Sorry to pop in unannounced.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
Well, off to visit your mother.
You're my special friend.
Kill the dragon, and then you get in the airship with Cid and Alphino.
What are all these little clips? Oh.
And then you go all the way to freaking somewhere. I think you're going to Gridania, and then you got to find some corrupted crystals, so you're going all over the place again. And that was a thing. I was like, ugh. More traveling around the world. So I had to do all that. Come back with the crystals. You end up fighting Garuda and all that stuff, and you go through things, and Garuda is like, I'm gonna kill everyone. And then you're just like, and then you go and queue for that trial, and you kill Garuda. And then the freaking Gaius von Belsar just sitting there on the side, just calling Garuda all sorts of expletives. And Garuda's like, I ain't having that, and just kills all the followers of everyone else. And then all the other people being sad and dying summons the other primals. And it's like, oh, hey, we got the whole party here. Then the Gundam Mechazoid Zord thing comes out of nowhere. And then he comes in, drops in the middle of them, and he's like, it's dinner time. And then he just grabs them all and bites their heads off like freaking animal crackers. I'm like, oh! Well then, after seeing all that, we end up like start bolting out of there. It's like, well, we can't deal with this thing. So then everyone like bonks their heads together. It's like, what do we do here? We're all stumped. And then something about like finding the Scions in this other cache room. You and, what was it, Y'shtola get together. You, Alvino, Y'shtola, and I think there was someone else. They get together and they start planning a way to rescue everyone. Then you end up rescuing from the cache room. It's like, oh, we're doing it. Oh, friends. Oh.
I don't remember this happening this fast. It's so overwhelming when you talk about the events this quickly.
I see your friends. I expected it to happen because freaking Shadowbringers trailer. No, but it's real nice having to go in there and to save your friends. I really liked it. So we go on through there and we do the whole little jump off the cliff thing, and then we get in the airship and everything's all hunky dory. And then it's like, oh wait, there's the Ascian down there. The darn Ascian guy. Then the Ascian shows it was like Thancred. When the Ascian took the mask off and it showed that it was Thancred, that made me start questioning the efficacy of the Shadowbringers trailer. I was like, wait, weren't you? Did I see another guy in the trailer? Wait, who are you? I'm confused. So that threw me for a loop when I saw...
I was a story skipper when I first played ARR. And if you're a story skipper during ARR, Thancred is a very confusing character. If you're just like lightly, occasionally skimming things and you're like, yeah, I get it. You're one of my bros. Wait, what? It's super, super confusing.
Thancred being possessed, I was like, oh gosh. I mean, they did look different between the trailer and what's here. Wait, does Thancred die? So I was starting to like question things. So after going through some more shenanigans, we get some like armies, people all together, and we end up invading the Praetorium. So we end up going through the cache room, and then we end up taking down overly obsessed Garlean, and then we go on further deeper, and then we fight the ultimate weapon. It was just, there's big old stuff going on, and then we end up fighting La Brea at the end. We end up fighting him, beating the crap out of Thancred. Poor Thancred. I don't know how he's still alive after the amount of times I've stabbed him in the gut. And the way the ending cinematic was a little cringy to me. The whole like power of light and friendship going in, just doing like the whole little light dash thing. I was like, it's a little cringy right there. It's okay, but well, I'll deal, I guess. So we end up taking La Brea out with that. Then everyone starts collapsing. Oh, by the way, yeah, this is the raid where that almighty great quote by Gaius comes from.
Such devastation!
But after doing a little escape theme to my favorite music piece of all time, which is the Final Fantasy theme, freaking love that theme. I love it. Now I was like, yeah, we did it! We all like settle all happily ever after in The Realm Reborn. And I was like, hey, yeah. And then some Ascian roar thing happens. And it's like, oh no, suspense of the future. And then we get into the Realm Reborn post-patch quest, which was, honestly, I really liked it because it felt like after Realm Reborn, which is a bunch of world building, and now we have our feet on the ground. So now we can start getting rolling now that we have context of how the whole world works and whatnot. And we start the whole Crystal Braves arc with Afino, which I thought had some really interesting twists and turns in it. So we ended up doing this whole investigation stuff all around the place. I can't remember a whole lot of details in depth, but I remember just the overall like underlying mystery of Crystal Braves. I don't remember a whole lot about post-patch of Realm Reborn in general. Then we see Moon Brita, who comes out of nowhere. It turns out she had a relationship with Urian J, which I thought was really interesting and helped Urian J become more of a relatable and interesting character, in my opinion. And after seeing them like bounce off, I was like, oh.
Unhand me.
Hey, that's sweet. And then she ends up discovering something extremely helpful for us in being able to wipe out an Ascian for good. But by the time she's ready to like do the first test, we had the invasion of the Ascians into the Waking Sense. They end up killing Minfilia. And I'm like, what the crap? We go in there. Interesting little fight in that little dimension. And then at the end of that whole little endeavor, Moon Brita does her little self-sacrifice thing with the crystal. And after she does that and Urian J gets the news of it, his voice actor, who I'm also aware is the same voice actor as Balthier from Final Fantasy XII, he started having this shaky voice, this weak, quaking voice, and I was just like, oh, That was well delivered. Well done. Props to the voice actor for delivering that line as well as he did. So then we keep on going through the whole thing, and
The voice acting gets so much better the longer you play this game. A Realm Reborn, like when you look at who the voice actors are, when you look at like who was on the 14 team, it doesn't make sense that the quality was so low compared to what it is in Shadowbringers. So I have to assume that A, they were on a really tight time crunch. They remade all of 2.0 in like 18 months. So I assume there's just some time crunch there where they just didn't have time to go back and say, that's not quite what we're looking for. Let's reshoot that with a little bit of feedback. And so I assume the time was a big portion of it. B, I think that the 14 team and their voice actors just got better at working together. So I think now, likely in the 1, 2, or 3 takes or whatever they're doing, I think they're better at giving direction and receiving direction because the quality of voice acting that we get in the current expansion is just so much better than a Realm Reborn.
the whole Crystal Brave thing ends up going to a climax with the Parting Glass MSQ quest. I had to put myself in the shoes of someone who's like experienced that as current content, and I could just imagine the amount of overall just like freakouts that that moment might have sparked for all these players, because I was just like, wow, this is a really freaking big moment for your character. The biggest moment. Like, yeah, you take out the ultimate weapon, but you've killed gods before. Seeing this moment where your friends are theoretically dead, that's big stuff. And I applaud the writers for taking that freaking leap. Man, I really, really like that moment. I was like, this is well done. This whole betrayal thing, I like it. And freaking Robon, I forgot to mention even like Robon's such a Chad. During that moment when he believed that Nanamo was completely poisoned there. Oh my gosh, I just feel like I want to take a moment here to just say the cinematography in the in-game cutscenes is really freaking good. I love the cinematography that these game devs use for all of these cutscenes because it adds more life with all these dynamic camera angles, and I really appreciate it. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because that moment when he goes in to cut Teleji add a Leggy like a veggie, seeing red used that way and just darkening the background right at that moment, I was like, yes! I love that. I mean, it's freaking anime as all heck, but I love it because that was a very dynamic and well done use of in-game assets, being able to light things up in certain ways, and just seeing all of it take place like that, I was just like, man.
You have to wonder if the glamour system largely, or the G-pose system largely came out of their desire to make a suite of tools in-game that allowed them to do this, because they use the in-game models. That way, if your character's in the scene, it just handles all of that. And so by building a suite of tools that allows them to do this, you have to wonder if this is the basis of kind of every time they add something to G-pose, they're like, we really need to be able to have some cutscenes in dungeons, and we want to be able to go back and reference old dungeons. What if we made G-pose in dungeons? Like, it just seems like the perfect excuse. The Mac equivalent to PowerPoint came out of that. Steve Jobs wanted a PowerPoint style tool built for exactly what he wanted as a form of presentation, and they developed it to the point where like, we should really be selling this. Like, it doesn't make any sense that we're dedicating developers to make a suite of tools for one person.
This is so cool. They got creative and artistic with it, and just seeing everything darken in the background as Robon is just in his rage. I've gone on way too long about that, but anywho, after I got his arm chopped out by Elbert, I really wanted to shank Elbert real bad. Like, I knew all the fingers were pointing to him for a good while for being like the traitor, but oh my gosh, I still hated seeing it like through and through. The freaking grin, that smug little smirk thing that those characters do, makes me want to just do things that is very angry and violent. But yeah, after that you end up going to your friend Harshaphon, who I have yet to really say at all, but he's like the one guy who actually gets you a footing into the whole Ishgardian society. But anyway, we end up sitting with Alphino, who is very, 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 very sad and broken at this point, and I was feeling really bad for him because technically it was his fault in a sense for getting it together to begin with, but at the same time it wasn't. I don't know, it was a rough situation. I wanted to be there for him. That's all I wanted to say. I'm not a good friend, I'll just be there. But he was like the only person we had. It was like, you know what, We'll get through this together. That was when like some serious bonding started happening with Alphino. Because Alphino, up to this point, he seemed kind of like the behind-the-scenes guy, the guy who was really pulling all the strings in the background. But after that whole fiasco, it reminded me that he's still just a kid, just trying to figure out things for himself. He just happens to have a lot of money and power and a good name to be able to do all that. But yeah. Oh, right! I was gonna end it right there, but I forgot to mention how I feel about Tataru. Tataru, don't know how you want to pronounce it, but Tataru, I don't know. Her first impression, she's like singing all happily when she's like doing work and whatnot. Oh, she's an adorable little thing, and she's probably the hardest working out of the lot.
Yeah.
I don't think she gets a break. Like, granted, all the Archons are constantly busy as well, but she's constantly doing all the technicalities of things and all the paperwork. I don't think she gets all the credit that she deserves, because good lord, being able to do all that and still keep a smile on her face. Oh, she's the embodiment of like the work. Oh,
No, like you went to work for the day for 8 hours and you came home, and in that time, she's like volunteered for 8 hours, and there's fresh cookies on the table, and dinner's coming out, and she did your laundry, and it's like, okay, you can't do your full-time job and everything I should have done and some extra nice stuff. Like there is no way she gets to that much stuff. It's insane. The support staff that she offers, it's nuts.
she's great. I love her. She's freaking adorable. Now, after I saying all that about A Realm Reborn, how do I feel about the whole thing altogether? The story itself was pretty good and decent. However, it wanted to opt in for more world building by throwing in a bunch of different side quests and side stories within the main story. And to me, that kind of felt a little jarring at times, because those side stories range from really interesting to really dull and boring and stuff I wouldn't really care about. So
that remains true. Side stories don't have to be related. The timelines, depending on when you do them, they can sometimes, like, since it doesn't require that you do them at a certain time, the timelines can feel a little like, I don't really, especially if you're going back and doing something like A Realm Reborn now, or if you go to do Shadowbringers even now, because we're going into Endwalker, so everything's unlocked. So you could finish Shadowbringers and then start A Sorrows of Were Lit. And so there's some weird, I don't know when this was released, who was supposed to be doing what at this time, and it doesn't make it clear when you click on a quest how, like, important that quest is going to be. And so you don't know, am I doing something that's effectively filler, or am I doing something that is really meant to expand on something they couldn't get into in MSQ, but it is important. They do have the little plus sign to tell us it's going to unlock something like a piece of content or an emote, and then they have just the normal ones, and they have the little, like, repeatable ones, but it doesn't give you an idea of the importance tied to it, because that would be kind of spoilery in itself. So there's no way to do that. And so you just go into every single quest series you do on your own, if you decide to clear a zone, not really knowing what you're getting into.
it was a really mixed bag as to what they tried to do here
And yes, Crystal Tower was optional back then. It is not now.
and there. It was not the best and most fluid experience, but looking at the actual core of the story, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't super mind-blowing, but overall the story, I think, is really enjoyable for A Realm Reborn. Not the best of the lot. It's just, I wish it wasn't slogging itself down so much with all the filler quests. Now, granted, it could be different now. I don't know. But from my experience, it was really slow. Also, it doesn't help that I started off as a Dragoon or Lancer, where you only get like 3 abilities until like level 40 or something. I forget. It was rough. That was a rough start. Outside of all of that, like, I'm sure I glossed through a lot of stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff I probably just went right on over. But that's all I can say.
I mean, you're 20 minutes into like 100 hours, so yes, you skipped a few things.
For as of right now, I had a decent time with A Realm Reborn. Wasn't the greatest thing ever, but I had a good time. And as for how I'd classify the story, well, it felt typically Final Fantasy, honestly. It felt like a Final Fantasy story through and through. You had like a bunch of magic people struggling against the high-tech, oppressing Imperial people, the Empire. Friggin' the Empire trope is like all over the place in fantasy. But yeah, I had fun. I had fun with it, and it got me absolutely hooked to keep on going for Heavensward, which is a whole nother doozy of stuff. So with all that said and done, I think I'm going to end my whole A Realm Reborn rant here. Thank you all very much for watching and or listening, and I hope you have a wonderful life. And don't click links. Take care, folks.
Well done. Well done. Good edit. He'll be our guest on Thursday. We've had him on before. I just hadn't seen this video. It's old. but I just hadn't seen it. Yeah. Super cool.